Projectile vomit splattered the drop pod interior as Belos blacked out from the violent impacts, his alien body broken and bleeding, wondering if any creature could possibly survive this suicidal human assault and still fight. The unfortunate Ocampa soldier had arrived at the galactic hub station mere hours before, nervously excited for the interspecies cultural exchange program with the human United Earth forces. Belos knew the fearful rumors of mankind's legendary toughness and aggression. He just never imagined experiencing it firsthand in such a brutal manner. At the airlock, a gruff human sergeant named Donald Robinson greeted Belos and a dozen other trembling aliens from various races also participating in the military exchange. Robinson practically threw Belos into a harness aboard the transport ship, strapping him in painfully tight. "Listen up, maggots," Robinson barked over the ship-wide comm, G-forces flattening Belos in his seat as the vessel accelerated. "You wanted to train like real human soldiers? Well, now you'll find out if you can hack it. Just try not to die when we hit the combat simulator, because I sure as hell won't scrape your xeno asses off my drop pod floors if you can't keep up with my squad." To punctuate his point, the sergeant suddenly sent the ship into a gut-wrenching, evasive barrel roll, nearly causing Belos to lose consciousness. The young alien soldier began seriously fearing for his life as they rocketed towards the surface. He realized these humans were insane and unhinged. No sane species trained like this. What had he gotten himself into? Yet Belos knew he couldn't back out now. This was a vital diplomatic mission. If the exchange failed because of his weakness, it could seriously damage relations between humans and his people. Mustering his courage, Belos tried to mentally prepare for the trials to come. He just hoped he could survive this madness without embarrassing himself or suffering grievous injury. Belos had a sickening suspicion the humans would show no mercy, even if he begged for it. The transport slammed into the surface of the barren moon, jolting Belos awake. He groaned, his body aching from the brutal flight. The pod doors hissed open, letting in the harsh artificial light of the UEF training facility. Belos staggered out with the other aliens, disoriented and nauseous. Sergeant Robinson stood outside, arms crossed, an impatient scowl on his face. "All right, maggots, you've got 5 minutes to grab your gear from the locker room and get your asses to the simulation arena. Move it." Belos stumbled into the locker room with the others. He found his locker and pulled out the heavy human combat armor. He struggled to put it on, the unfamiliar straps and buckles confounding his shaking fingers. It was clearly made for humans, not Ocampans. The chest piece felt constricting, the boots oversized. Robinson paced behind them, yelling at them to hurry up. Finally suited up, Belos jogged with the group to the arena. Robinson split them into fire teams of 4, mixing the aliens with UEF recruits. Belos found himself leading a team with 3 sneering humans. "Listen up," Robinson barked. "This is an urban combat sim. Your objective is to capture the central command building. Belos, you're in charge of your fire team." Me?" Belos stammered. "But I've never—" "You're the highest ranking of our allies," Robinson said with a smirk. "Congrats." The human recruits in Belos's fire team snickered, clearly amused by his discomfort. Belos took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. He had to prove himself. He nodded to Robinson. Sirens blared. The arena gate dropped. Belos charged forward into the simulated war-torn cityscape, his team close behind. Almost immediately, the deafening rat-tat-tat of gunfire surrounded them. Explosions shook the ground, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. Belos froze, overwhelmed by the cacophony. A hard shove from behind nearly knocked him over. One of his human teammates, a burly man with a battle-scarred face, had rammed into him. "Keep moving or you're dead," the man yelled over the din of battle. Heart pounding, Belos forced his legs to pump faster. He ran in a zigzag pattern, trying to avoid the rubble that littered the street. His oversized boots caught on a chunk of concrete, nearly sending him sprawling. He managed to right himself at the last second. This was going to be a very long day indeed. As Belos and his squad pushed deeper into the war-torn cityscape, the human recruits bounded ahead with reckless abandon. They vaulted over rubble, and sprinted across open ground, heedless of the simulated bullets whizzing past. Belos and the other aliens struggled to keep pace, their hearts hammering in their chests. "Pick up the pace, maggots!" Sergeant Robinson's voice crackled over their helmet comms. "Don't let your alien allies slow you down!" The humans whooped in response, pouring on even more speed. Belos gritted his teeth, his lungs burning and his legs aching in the heavy armor. He forced himself to pump his legs faster, determined not to fall behind. Rounding a corner, they ran smack into an ambush. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, barely missing Belos's head as he hurled himself behind the burned-out husk of a vehicle. The human recruits barely seemed to notice, returning fire with a hail of bullets and pushing forward into the enemy position. "Eat lead, suckers," one of them crowed, lobbing a grenade. The explosion shook the ground, sending chunks of concrete flying. Belos watched in awe as the humans advanced, their faces alight with fierce, almost feral grins. They seemed to revel in the chaos and danger, their reflexes lightning fast, their aim true. The rumors of human ferocity were clearly no exaggeration. As the ambushers fell back, Belos rallied his beleaguered alien squadmates, and they pushed on toward the objective building. Just as it came into view, the ground shuddered beneath their feet. With a deafening crash, a massive mech suit smashed through a wall, its cannon swiveling to lock onto Belos's fire team. "Now that's more like it," the burly human recruit roared. Ignoring Belos's shout of warning, the man charged straight at the mech, firing from the hip as he dodged and rolled. Belos and the other aliens hit the dirt as the mech's cannons boomed, raking their position with heavy fire. Belos hugged the ground, sure he was about to die in this insane simulation. But somehow, impossibly, the human recruit managed to leap onto the mech's back. He pried open a maintenance panel and emptied his rifle into the machine's internals. The mech convulsed in a shower of sparks and smoke, its limbs going slack. "Hell yeah," the human crowed, leaping down from the wreckage. "Let's move, slowpoke, so that objective ain't gonna capture itself." Belos picked himself up on trembling legs, staring at the whooping, grinning human in disbelief. How in the galaxy were they going to make it through the rest of this simulation in one piece, let alone the entire exchange program? As the squad advanced toward the battered command center, Belos sent a silent prayer to his ancestors. Panting and sweating buckets in his ill-fitting armor, Belos staggered up to the battered entrance of the command building alongside his squad. Just as they prepared to breach, Sergeant Robinson's voice crackled over the helmet comms again. "New objective, maggots. There's a flag at the top of this building. First team to grab it wins the scenario, but we've activated the automated defenses to make it interesting. Turrets, traps, the works. If you die in there, you're done. Now get moving." Belos gulped hard, eyeing the foreboding structure. Booby traps and unknown dangers awaited inside. Before he could voice any concerns, his human teammates whooped in delight and charged through the shattered doors, rifles blazing. Belos had no choice but to follow. Hostile fire rained down on them the moment they entered. Belos scrambled for cover behind a bullet-riddled reception desk as the human recruits returned fire with gusto. Belos popped up to squeeze off a few shots, then ducked back down as rounds pinged off the desk inches from his helmet. "Hostiles on the balcony!" Belos shouted, spotting movement above. But the humans were already bounding up the stairs, hurdling the barricades like they were nothing. Belos forced his trembling legs to carry him after his squad, mentally cursing the restrictive armor with each step. On the second floor, a crackling sound made him freeze. His eyes widened as arcs of electricity sizzled across the floor ahead, dancing between metal spikes. "Watch out, some kind of shock trap," Belos warned. To his disbelief, the burly human pointman just laughed and hurled a frag grenade, blasting a path through the electrified spikes. As the smoke cleared, the man ran forward, deliberately stomping on a floor panel Belos just noticed was slightly raised. Metal blades scythed out from hidden wall compartments, whirring through the spot the man had occupied a split second before. Belos stared slack-jawed as the human shouldered his rifle and popped a smoke grenade, obscuring them from the hostiles firing from the far end of the hall. Sir, oldest trick in the book. Come on, Zeno, get the lead out. This is the easy shit. Pulse pounding in his ears, Belos forced himself to advance, trying not to imagine those razor-sharp blades slicing into his comparatively soft flesh. The humans barely seemed to register the danger, deliberately triggering more traps to take out clumps of enemies as they leapfrogged toward the stairwell. Belos winced as a spray of simulated shrapnel cut down a hostile right in front of him, the man's agonized scream mixing with the crazed laughter of the human recruit who'd set off the booby-trapped doorway. "I ought to see the stuff we rig up in live-fire exercises," the man called over his shoulder, picking shards of plastic from his armor. "Now that's a real party." Belos shook his head in disbelief. These humans were absolutely mad. On the fourth floor, a burst of automatic fire sent them scrambling for doorways as rounds stitched the walls. "Sniper!" Belos yelled, pointing at a muzzle flash from a shadowed alcove down the hall. He swiveled his rifle, looking for a way to flank the shooter. But before he could suggest a plan, the youngest human recruit grabbed a riot shield from a fallen enemy and charged straight down the corridor like a bat out of hell. Belos watched in horror as rounds sparked off the shield, sure he was about to see the boy cut down. But the recruit just kept running, letting out a wild battle cry as he drew the sniper's fire. It was all the distraction Belos's team needed. The burly pointman leaned out and drilled the sniper right between the eyes with a laser-precise shot. The recruit with the shield whooped and kicked the corpse for good measure. "Knew you had my back." Belos leaned against the wall, trying to slow his breathing. He'd almost had a heart attack at that display of reckless bravery. Did these humans have no sense of self-preservation? As if to answer his unspoken question, the entire building suddenly shook with a tremendous boom. Dust sifted from the ceiling as Sergeant Robinson's gleeful voice came over the comms. "Fire teams, I've activated this structure's self-destruct sequence. You have 5 minutes to get your asses out before the whole place comes down on your heads. Oh, and that flag is still up for grabs. TikTok maggots." Belos looked at his teammates in disbelief. Surely now they would have to abandon this insane objective and save themselves, but the humans just exchanged excited grins, reloading their weapons and checking their armor. "I heard the Sarge. Let's grab that flag and win this thing." "But the building's about to collapse," Belos protested. "We need to get out now." The burly pointman clapped him on the shoulder, nearly knocking Belos over. "What's wrong, Zeno? Don't tell me you're scared of a little rubble. We've got this in the bag." Belos swallowed a hysterical laugh. A little rubble? The whole damn place was about to implode. But the humans were already moving toward the stairs, determined to see this through to the bitter end. Heart feeling like it was about to burst out of his chest, Belos had no choice but to follow. Explosions shook the building as they pelted up the final staircase, dodging falling chunks of concrete and clouds of choking dust. Belos's legs felt like rubber, his body pushed to its absolute limits, but a final burst of adrenaline propelled him up the last few steps behind his squad. They stacked up at the rooftop access door, mere seconds left on the clock. "Breaching!" the pointman yelled and kicked the door open. Belos stumbled out onto the roof, squinting against the simulated sunlight. There, fluttering atop a pole mere meters away, was their objective. The flag was so close he could almost touch it. They were going to make it. A thunderous metallic clanking shattered his elation. Belos turned slowly, dread squeezing his guts. His eyes widened in horror at the sight of a hulking alien combat drone stomping out from behind an air-conditioning unit, stubby barrels of its rotary cannons already spinning up to speed. The massive war machine was a Zethian annihilator, heavily armored and nearly unstoppable. It was absolutely the last thing Belos wanted to see between him and their exfiltration. But the human recruits just started laughing, leveling their rifles at the mechanical monstrosity with obvious glee. "Now that's what I'm talking about," the burly pointman roared. "Let's scrap this tin can." As the drone opened fire, bullet impact sparking off its thick armor plating, Belos dove for the dubious cover of a large roof vent and started to pray. The building shook and began to crumble. Belos was sure this was the end. There was no way they could destroy this fearsome war machine and get the flag before the whole place came down. It was over. They had failed. All because of the humans' stubborn refusal to back down from a challenge. As the floor buckled and explosions ripped through the structure, Belos closed his eyes and prepared to meet his ancestors. The building shuddered, massive cracks splitting the roof. Flames and smoke billowed up through the fissures. The hulking war droid advanced, energy cannons blasting divots out of the concrete. Belos ducked behind rubble, heart hammering against his ribs. "Flank it! Droids fire!" The burly human pointman charged forward, rifle chattering. Bullets sparked off the droid's thick armor plating to no effect. Another human lobbed a grenade, the explosion staggering the machine back a step. It swiveled and unleashed a barrage, stitching the human's cover with searing bolts. "I can't penetrate it." The youngest recruit emptied his rifle at the droid. "Anyone got explosives?" The pointman hurled another grenade. It detonated under the droid's legs, knocking it off balance. He dashed forward and jammed his rifle into a knee joint, pulling the trigger until the gun clicked empty. Servos whined and sparked. The droid shook him off like an angry bull. The man rolled away, barely avoiding a stomping metal foot. "I think I pissed it off." Belos leaned out and fired, trying to hit its optical sensors. His hands shook. The droid was too fast, his shots going wide. The youngest recruit suddenly sprinted forward. Belos watched in disbelief as the human tackled the droid around its legs. The machine staggered, off balance. The recruit jammed something into a gap in its armor and leapt away. "Get clear, fire in the hole." A tremendous explosion rocked the roof. The droid disappeared in a fireball of shrapnel and smoke. The shockwave hurled Belos back, slamming him to the ground. His ears rang, vision swimming. Belos pushed himself up on ringing arms. The droid lay in smoking ruin, blown apart from the inside. Of the recruit there was no sign. The burly pointman charged past, hurdling the droid's wreckage without breaking stride. He snatched the flag and waved it high. "Go, go, go! This thing's coming down!" The building bucked and swayed. Explosions boomed from the lower floors, fire geysering up through yawning rents in the roof. Belos scrambled to his feet and sprinted for the stairwell. Concrete cracked and shifted under his boots. Chucks of ceiling smashed down around them. Dust choked the air. Belos leapt a widening fissure, nearly falling. The humans bounded ahead, somehow sure-footed in the chaos. Belos hit the final landing and dashed for the exit. His foot snagged on rubble. He fell hard, flag flying from his grip. Belos crawled forward, groping for it. The doorway collapsed in a deluge of concrete. A vice-like grip clamped Belos's arm. The burly pointman dragged him up and shoved him bodily through the door. "I've got you, move." They stumbled out into the open air. Behind them, the building imploded with a deafening roar. A blast of heat and debris hammered Belos to his knees. He huddled there, gasping, as the awful sounds slowly faded. Belos looked up. The humans stood panting and grinning, whooping in victory. The pointman held the flag high. Medics rushed past, toward a prone form on a stretcher. The youngest recruit. Sergeant Robinson strode up, face streaked with dust and sweat. He clapped Belos on the shoulder. "Not bad for an alien. Maybe you're UF material after all." Belos just shook his head, too spent to reply. He watched the medics load the wounded human into an ambulance shuttle. The other recruits joked and laughed, seemingly unfazed by their comrade's sacrifice. Belos shambled to the waiting transport in a daze, body aching, mind numb. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the blasted moonscape behind. Belos stared out the porthole. Earth's blue marble swelled in the distance, deceptively tranquil from afar. But Belos knew better now. He'd seen humanity's true colors today. Their reckless courage, their feral battle lust, their casual disregard for life and limb. It terrified him to his core. Belos knew he'd have one hell of a story to tell back home, if they even believed him. He wondered how his fellow exchange soldiers had fared. The shuttle docked at the hub station. Belos staggered out, battered and drained in body and soul. The trauma of this day would haunt him forever, a glimpse into the sheer madness that was humanity. As Belos stumbled through the airlock, he saw his fellow exchange soldiers milling about in the hangar. They looked as shell-shocked as he felt, eyes haunted, bodies bruised. The Keldreth warrior leaned heavily on a crutch, one leg a mangled wreck. The Zithan had his arm in a sling, face pale with pain. Even the mighty Grok berserker trembled, battered and diminished. But worst of all were the humans, lounging and laughing, trading war stories. They showed off scars and stitches like badges of honor. To them it had been just another day of training. Belos shuddered. These humans weren't just reckless or aggressive, they were insane. What hope did the galaxy have if they ever turned their terrifying prowess to conquest? Belos made his way to a quiet corner of the hub and sat down heavily, legs finally giving out. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.